Hello, Professor Kukral here. I want to talk to you about a dry part of the world, a place we often call the Middle East. Sometimes in our textbooks we call it Southwest Asia and North Africa. It's a place that goes by many names. So, here we are. We're not in North Africa. This is not the Sahara Desert. We're not in Saudi Arabia. These are not the giant dunes you find there. But I thought this would be a nice setting because there's a lot of sand. It's a coastal dune over here, just like we have in northern Indiana. But it's a good place to talk a little about the Middle East. You know, the chapter in your book is called Southwest Asia and North Africa. And this is a part of the world that goes by so many different names, right? We commonly call it the Middle East, which doesn't mean a lot to somebody if you're living in India or China. It's not very much the middle of the East. We also call it what else? The Near East is an older name for it. Sometimes it was called the Near East. Where did those names come from, the Near East and the Middle East? They came from the British, of course, because we're speaking English. And when the British colonized and explored and ruled much of the world, they talked about the Far East, they talked about the Near East, they talked about the Middle East. So we're stuck with those names now. Okay, but it's also called the Holy Land by some people. It's a place where three major world religions originated, right? We have the origins of Judaism, we have the origins of Islam, we have the origins of Christianity, all in the Middle East, all diffused to other parts of the world. Okay, what else do we call this part of the world? One of the old names, specific names, we talk about the Fertile Crescent. When we talk about the Fertile Crescent, we're talking about an area between the Tigris-Euphrates rivers that's going to go over into the coastal zones of the Eastern Mediterranean, because this is an area that's very rich where early civilizations began. There's also the Nile Valley, where another great civilization began. Okay, if we want to look at history in this part of the world, we can say Western civilization began here, right? Long before the Egyptians. When we look at the Hittites, the Phoenicians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, all these ancient civilizations that began urbanization with the Neolithic Revolution. What was the Neolithic Revolution? If you don't know, look it up. It's when people started staying in place instead of moving around. It's when humans became urban and village people. When we say urban people, we're talking about people in villages as well as big cities, not just big city. That's not the only thing urban. Urban is also a village, a town, a city. Those are all urban people. Okay, rural people live dispersed in remote, not always remote, but in rural areas. But urbanization began here. City building began here. Written language as we know it began here. Early belief systems that led to later religious faiths began here. And so in many ways, we can say Western civilization began in this part of the world, in the Middle East. We'll call it the Middle East. Keep in mind that includes North Africa as well. Okay, because of a common cultural heritage shared here that I'll talk about in a second, okay? Let me just pause this a minute here. So this part of the world goes by different names. We can call it Southwest Asia, North Africa, which is very geographical. We can call it the Middle East, which is a historic and common name used in journalism and used by about everybody. We can call it the Holy Land, which has many meanings to different peoples, calling it the Holy Land. But anyways, the next question is, when I say early civilizations began here, and this is beginning of Western civilization, we think of before the Egyptians even, and later the Greeks and Romans. This is all part of the Greek and Roman world as well. The Romans, think about the Roman Empire. It was not just Italy, right? It was all over Europe and included much of England, and included the whole Middle East, and included North Africa. The middle of their world was the Mediterranean, and hence the name Mediterra, the middle of the earth. That was the Roman world. So we have a series of civilizations that have prospered here in this part of the world, in the Middle East. We have a long history, written history. We have artifacts, human artifacts that go way, way back. A lot of people visit the pyramids. A lot of people visit the Middle East to the Holy Land. They go on pilgrimages. They go to towns like Bethlehem. They want to go to Jerusalem. They want to walk where Jesus walked. Things like this. So it's a conflicted part of the world because we're involved there today, right? Because of conflict. We can look at what's gone on in Iraq, what's going on in Syria today. Unfortunately, the conflict is what's highlighted mostly in the media. There's many other parts of this world, this region, that are at peace, that are places that are wonderful to visit. Okay? It's not a place where they're constantly fighting about religion. They're rarely fighting about religion. They're fighting about who controls the land and who's in power. That's what the real fight is about. Religious fights are pitting one idea against another, and that's usually not what goes on. Okay? So who are the people in this part of the world? Well, the vast majority of people are Arabs. And that leads to the next question, who are the Arabs? Okay? There's over 330 million Arabs. I think the number is actually closer to 350 million Arabs. So what defines an Arab? You know, that's a big question. If we talk about what defines a European, it's people that live in Europe. Okay, if we talk about Americans, they're people that live in one country, that live in America. If we talk about the Arab people, the Arabs cover North Africa, cover the Middle East. They live in countries like Saudi Arabia and Yemen and Oman. They live in Syria and Iraq and Lebanon. They live in Morocco and Algeria and Egypt. These are all Arab people, and they're defined by their language. The people that speak Arabic as their native language are Arabs, okay? They may define themselves by states today. They may call themselves Egyptians or Tunisians or Mauritanians or Saudis or Jordanians. That's a state definition, but if you look at the big picture, they're all Arab-speaking people, and Arabic is the major language here, okay? So the majority of people here are Arabs. The majority of people follow the Islamic faith, although there are Christian minorities here, very ancient Christian communities, especially in Lebanon and Syria and Palestine. We'll talk more about Palestine later. Anyways, this part of the world, who are the people who are not Arabs that live here? Well, the Iranians. And that's one of the first things Iranians will tell you. We're not Arabs. Okay, Iranians, this is the land of ancient Persia. They speak a completely different language, very different than Arabic. Okay, they have a proud history of being Persians, Iranians, if you want, speaking Farsi, not being Arab people. So when we get to Iran, we're leaving the Arab world. Okay, we're still part of the Middle East, but we're leaving the culture of the Arab people. Okay, the Turks are another big minority, and some would say the Turks are more affiliated with Europe these days. The Turks are not Arabs either. Okay, another group that are not Arabs are the Berbers. Maybe you know the Berbers, maybe not. The Berbers live in northwest Africa in the Maghreb region. Okay, the Atlas Mountains, we find the Berbers. Speaking a distinctively different language, we find them in Morocco and Tunisia and Algeria, the Berber people. Are there any other significant minorities in the Middle East, North Africa? Well, what about the state of Israel? That's a special case. As everybody probably knows, Israel was founded as a Jewish homeland for Jews from all over the world to come and live there. And obviously, when we look at how they define themselves, the Jews of Israel are not Arabs, okay? There are Arabs that live in Israel. Most of those are Palestinians, but the majority of people in Israel property are Jewish. And that's one of the other groups in Arabs in this part of the world, okay? So that's defining the Arab people a little bit. Let's think about the land and the environment in a second here. You know, we're entering a very dry part of the world here. We're entering a world that water resources are critical. Water resources are pretty important in this part of the world, as they are everywhere. But they're highly critical, they're highly valued, They're highly sought freshwater resources in much of the Middle East. People do not live in deserts in any large numbers, okay? They live where there is water. People cannot survive in a desert unless there's a water source, an oasis perhaps, or a deep well that a town may grow up around. But most people live in towns. Most people live in the area called the Fertile Crescent, where you get significant rainfall and you have river systems. Why are the rivers important? Well, the rivers are where civilizations began, okay? The Tigris Euphrates. This is the old ancient land of Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, Greek for between the rivers. Okay, ancient civilizations began between the Tigris and Euphrates. Now in Iraq, okay? The Nile River Valley, another great river system where 90% of the people of Egypt live within I think it's 5 to 10 miles of the Nile River. Without the Nile, Egypt wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have all these great monuments to their ancient culture. Egyptian civilization lasted a long, long time. That was one of the great empires of humans that survived well over 1,000 years. Not many can say they've done that, okay? But let's look at the environment. It is a drier environment. Okay, we'll talk about that, why it's so dry. Desertification, the spread of deserts, is an issue, especially in Africa, as it's drying out more and more. The largest desert in the world is there, right? The Sahara. And Sahara, what does Sahara mean? Well, it's an Arabic word for desert. So that's pretty easy to remember, the Sahara. Okay, the Sahara jumps over the Red Sea and becomes the Arabian deserts of Saudi Arabia. That's basically a continual desert right there. Okay, people don't live here, and the Sahara really divides two major cultures. To the north of the Sahara, you have the Arab culture, the Arabic people, okay, in places like Libya and Egypt, and what else is there? Algeria, Morocco. I think we got everybody, Tunisia, Egypt. Yeah, that's North Africa, okay? And when we go south of the vast Sahara Desert, you know, the Sahara Desert is as big as the United States. You can put the United States in the Sahara Desert. When we go south of the Sahara, then we're getting into African culture. And when we think about African culture, when we think about black African culture, tropical African culture, this is a different part of the world, okay? And we'll talk about that much later as we get south of the Sahara. As we go over into the Middle East proper, we'll find most people live where there is significant rainfall, or enough rainfall for humans to survive, okay, and that's in the Levant. That's another name for the Eastern Mediterranean. Think about the word Levant, or Levant, or Levantine, okay, and think about levitation. Think about the word levitation, or think about leavening bread, making it rise, okay. This is an uplands area. It's where you have the hills of Galilee, the mountains of Lebanon, okay. You have highlands, so when moist air is coming across the Mediterranean, as much as there is, it's lifted up, and through orographic precipitation we get rainfall, and so there's enough rainfall. So this is a highly populated area, the Eastern Mediterranean, the Levant, okay. We're talking about Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, and parts of Syria. Okay, right there. Did I forget any? Well, you can add Amman, Jordan in there as well. Okay, and then as we go east, we're going to get into a very dry desert area again, the Nafud Desert and the Syrian Desert, and until we get to the river systems of Iraq, then we see population again in the Tigris and Euphrates. Okay. If we head south to the Arabian Peninsula, just look at a map. What's the big peninsula there? The big Arabian Peninsula. We have Saudi Arabia dominating it. The Arabia of Saud, of the Saudi family. Okay, not too many countries are named after a family like that. Okay. Around Saudi Arabia, you have some of the wealthiest little countries, like the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, where you have Dubai and Abu Dhabi. That wealth is gleaned from what? Of course, oil resources. I think everybody knows that. Saudi Arabia as well. There are very poor countries around here as well, like Yemen. Yemen is a desperately poor country that's struggling right now, south of Saudi Arabia. Countries like Oman, these are all part of the Gulf states and the Arabian Peninsula. Remember, when we talk about oil resources, they're almost entirely or in mass quantity accessible around the Persian Gulf. And so when we talk about the Gulf states and oil resources, we're looking at the countries around the Persian Gulf, and that's where oil wealth is derived from. Other Arab countries, other Middle Eastern countries do not have that resource, or if they have it, it's in limited amounts, except for maybe Libya. And they're much, much poorer, we have to say. Okay, so let me take a break here for a second. Okay, there was a helicopter going overhead. It was pretty loud. It was low. I think it was a Coast Guard. There may be more. I hear another one now. Well, let's go on. When we look at the physical geography, again, I mentioned it's a dry part of the world. Where is that guy? I don't know. It's a dry part of the world, and when we look at North Africa, we find most people live near the coastal zones of North Africa or along the Nile River. That's the only major river in North Africa, or in the Atlas Mountains where you get rainfall. And the Atlas Mountains give their name to the Atlantic Ocean and everything else. Okay, and we find the Atlas Mountains. So I'll look at a map. We find them in Morocco and Tunisia and Algeria. Okay, and that's also another area where we have some significant populations. So that's a little bit of an introduction to the Middle East. There are problems there we'll talk about and you can read about as well. Obviously there's conflict that's gone on a long time between Israel and Palestine, the Palestinian people. I want you to read about that. I want you to understand that conflict about land issues mostly. Israel was created where Palestine was, and that's part of the problem whenever somebody does that. There's other issues. There's a civil war in Syria that's really destroyed much of Syria. There's been conflict in other places, and unfortunately it's given a reputation to the Middle East that many people don't want to really get involved with it or go there. However, Egypt is one of the most visited countries on earth. Okay, people do still visit here. When we look at conflict anywhere on earth, it's usually isolated. And when we look at issues of terrorism, we can see that they're not limited to any one country really at all. That we find global terrorism. That's been something since the 1990s all over the earth, unfortunately. So, but the Middle East is a fascinating place. It's a place with great history. It's a place where we can see the origins of science, scientific thinking, and how that spread to other parts of the world. It's a place where great religions began. It's a place that's misunderstood quite a bit, I'd say, the Middle East and the Arab people. But I hope from the week you spend on it, we can find some amazing things to learn about in this part of the world. Okay? So, I think I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to get off the sand dune, which are, you know, they're not the easiest thing to walk up to the top, a sand dune. You just keep slipping down. All right, and this is not a big one. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.